opportunity to talk to you. Informational support is extremely important to us, and the informational support is no less important than the support with weapons. That's why thank you again. As to the Bakhmut situation, we understand what Russia wants to achieve there. Russia needs at least some victory, a small victory, even by ruining everything in Bakhmut, just killing every civilian there. They need to put that little flag on top of that to show their society. It's not a victory for them. It's more like, like to support, to mobilize their society in order to create this idea of there's such a powerful army. For us, it's totally different. This is tactical for us. We understand that after Bakhmut, they could go further. They could go to Kramatorsk, to Slavyansk, and it would be an open road for the Russians after Bakhmut to other towns in Ukraine, in the Donetsk direction, in the east of Ukraine. That's why our guys are standing there.
As you know, Mr. President, some of your own Ukrainian commanders have actually questioned holding on to Bakhmut as their forces are suffering very heavy casualties right now, amid worries that could hurt Ukraine's ability to launch a spring offensive. What do you say to those commanders?
Firstly, it's not related to our official position of those commanders. That's why we're having the meetings of the Chief of Staff, when everyone is talking openly about things which are basically close to everyone else. So we're waiting for the information to come in. And there are more than 20 people are present at this meeting from the intelligence services and the security services. We also have the National Guard's commanders, and every single commander. That's why I never heard anything like that from any of those commanders. How can I treat this? It means that someone has his own opinions, but it does look like a fake and created in Russian Federation that our troops should be retreating.
How much do you believe, Mr. President, that the battle for Bakhmut has actually weakened Putin's forces? How many men has he lost in this fight for Bakhmut? Do you know?
We know every name who is being lost there. We're treating it very seriously. We lost in times less than Russia lost there. They don't care about their people. They just like throw them under the bullets. And we're standing strong. We have a defensive mission there, very much like in different directions. Russia is trying to attack, but it's in vain.
As you know, Mr. President, a very disturbing video has emerged in recent days appearing to show the execution of a Ukrainian prisoner of war by the Russians. This soldier has now been identified. He was fighting, as you know, near Bakhmut. And I want to warn our viewers right now, we'll play a little clip. This is graphic. Watch this. His last words were, "Glory to Ukraine." What goes through your mind, Mr. President, watching that truly horrific execution of one of your soldiers?
This is the show of the Russian attitude towards POWs. They don't have any laws of war or international law or any conventions. It's a question that these people, they don't respect anything. They don't fight like soldiers. For us, it's a war for our freedom, for democracy, for our values. For them, it's a terrorism. That's the attitude. And they post these videos. They just killed a guy who refused to surrender, and he said, "Glory to Ukraine." That's what you got. This is the face of this war. This is the face of the Russian Federation.
The White House expects Russia will aim to go on the offensive, the military offensive, on multiple fronts this spring. What are you preparing for, Mr. President? Do you anticipate Russia will attack on multiple fronts in the Donbass, or does Putin have broader ambitions across Ukraine?
Intelligence works every day with our partners' intelligence. The US, UK, the European Union countries. We constantly exchange information, and we don't have any secrets from each other. We're all on the same side of information, and we think that in the Donbass direction, Russia started its offensive. This is the offensive. This is what looks like a slow aggression, because they don't have enough strength and forces. On the other hand, we see the concentration of force by Russians. We are ready for this, we're getting ready for this, and we're getting the information from our partners. We understand that we have to be ready for everything, and we have to concentrate strength and forces and new weaponry from our partners in order to conduct our counter-offensive operation.
A lot more to come with President Zelensky, but first we go to CNN's Alex Marquardt. He's joining us live from Kyiv right now. Alex, you've just come from eastern Ukraine, where you spent some considerable time on the front lines around Bakhmut. So where does the fight there stand right now?
Wolf, it is extraordinarily fierce fighting, and it has been for months now. I was speaking with a senior Pentagon official who said it is very impressive how the Ukrainians are holding their ground. They're making the Russians fight for every inch. Where the Ukrainians have to withdraw, they're doing it in a smart way. So the Ukrainians are holding on for now. The Russians are making a significant push. They have made some gains. Now, as you know, Wolf, the Russian forces have been led by those Wagner mercenaries, largely those contractors, mercenary contractors and convicts who have died by the thousands. But they have made some gains at trying to encircle the city, particularly lately in the north of the city, as they try to cut off the main supply route that Ukraine uses to resupply its troops. We have seen Wagner forces pushing into the east of the city quite significantly. We saw Wagner forces replacing the Ukrainian flag on a tank with their own flag. We saw the head of Wagner, Evgeny Prigozhin, in the eastern part of the city, but Prigozhin also complaining about the lack of support from the Russian military. Wolf, the Ukrainian military has done a very good job at degrading Russia's military forces there. We've seen Wagner having to use some of their more elite forces in this fight, backed up by Russian airborne forces. So this is not just the cannon fodder that Wagner has been accused of using before. There have been lots of questions, Wolf, why President Zelensky keeps committing to this fight, because many analysts believe that it is not very strategic. But what President Zelensky has shown is that the Ukrainian forces are very much degrading and weakening the Russian troops there, so that if they were to take Bakhmut, they wouldn't be able to make much progress going further west from there. A lot of analysts and officials disagree with President Zelensky that it would be an open road for Russia if Russia were to take Bakhmut, because it's not very easy to move west or north from Bakhmut, and they would be in a very weakened state. At the same time, Wolf, because so many thousands of men have lost their lives, and this fight has been going on for so many months, if Russia did take Bakhmut, it would be a significant symbolic victory for them.
Certainly would be. Alex Marquardt, stay safe over there. Thank you very much. We'll have much more of our exclusive interview with President Zelensky in just a moment, including the disagreement with the Biden administration over sending U.S. fighter jets to Ukraine. And we'll ask the White House directly where that effort stands. That's next. Plus, what President Biden told President Zelensky during that dramatic trip to the war zone. Back now to our exclusive interview with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. We continue now with this country's ongoing push for the United States to send modern fighter jets to Ukraine to help defeat Russian forces. To date, President Biden has said no. So what does Zelensky think it will take to get a yes? President Biden recently said that you don't need these F-16 U.S. fighter jets, at least not right now. Did he give you an explanation for that when you met face-to-face recently in Kyiv?
Питання літаків складне.
The fighter jets issue is difficult. We are waiting for this decision to be taken. And I say, like, the fighter jets supply, it's a part of the defense of our infrastructure, energy supplies, and other strategic supplies, because it's a part of the air defense, and that's what it is. And we don't have the fighter jets to deal with it, to counteract the Russian hits, and we really need this, and really appeal to the president that they could start training Ukrainian pilots. And President Biden told me that it would be worked upon, and I believe that United States will give us the opportunity to defend our skies. This is the thing. The UK is helping this, and a number of European countries.
Are Western fighter jets, U.S. fighter jets, other Western fighter jets, Mr. President, the weapon that will make or break a Ukrainian victory?
Так, ми вважаємо, що
Yes, we believe so. In this war, there were several pages.
була допомога.
There were artillery supplies, 155 millimeters. Then the next page was HIMARS supplies. And now other page, we got air defense systems for Ukraine being sent in order to preserve Ukrainian infrastructure and energy supplies. And fighter jets are part of this structure. And as you know, we also had a page on the tanks. And as soon as we started opening this page, the tanks will be supplied to Ukraine.
I just want to clarify, Mr. President, did President Biden tell you that fighter jets to Ukraine are still possible?
Ми говорили, а ви
We spoke about fighter jets, and you make your own assumptions. President Biden has this position from his advisors, aides, in the military direction, that what Ukraine doesn't need at the moment. And jets, according to that, were not needed. And I said, no, we need those jets, and this is a clear sign of a part of our air defense, to defend our infrastructure and our population, because we can't receive 20, 30 air defense systems for Ukraine, because it's a long process to receive those systems in Ukraine. We don't have that, and we won't get it in 1 or 2 years, because this manufacturing is a long process. But what fighter jets could do, they could help us to defend ourselves. That's why we need it urgently.
Я йому це пояснив, він
And I explained it to President Biden, and I said, let's just start the training mission. And I have confirmation from the Polish and the UK side that they would go ahead with the training mission tomorrow. And the coalition of the fighter jets from different countries, they want to have the US decision in this. That's why, as I said, a lot depends on the US here, because we're talking about a training mission and supply of fighter jets by other countries. They wait for the United States decision. That's what I said to President Biden. And I said, okay, let's work on this issue. So the ball was in the court of the US president, so we expect what will be decided soon.
What was it like, Mr. President, to have President Biden on the ground with you in Kyiv for the first time since the war began, as those air raid sirens were blaring around you?
Ну, ми не боїмося цих сирен.
We are not afraid of sirens, to be honest. We've learned to live with them. We worked with the president, we left our presidential palace, and we went outside, and we had a look at a memory wall of remembrance of our fallen heroes. And I'm happy that this siren didn't affect President Biden or his team. So we paid our respect to the fallen heroes despite the sirens. And it really supported me from the inside. It was such a cool signal, and that's respect to the President and to the United States. We show that we're not afraid of the sirens, we're not afraid of Russia. We want to pay our respect to someone who gave their lives to freedom and democracy all over the world, not just one person who went crazy and tried to scare the world with some missile attack. This visit as a whole was very symbolic and very motivating one.
What did it mean to your country, to Ukraine, the people in Ukraine, to have the President of the United States there walking on the streets with you?
Спокій,
It's a calm.
впевненість,
It meant calm and
захист
protection,
і повна
confidence.
любов.
The food protection, calm.
А вже ж ми розуміємо, що
Clearly, none of us will get until the end of the world because war is not peace and nothing nice about it.
війні немає.
But the
Але
signals of the words, of the feelings, through the presence of the US President in Kiev, they went onto such a different level. We have this feeling that you're not alone. There's a feeling that America is with you
Америка це
and other partners,
інші.
and that shows
Це говорить про те,
that, of course, we will prevail.
що переможе.
So the big question right now, will President Biden change course and send fighter jets to Ukraine? Joining us now, the White House National Security Spokesman, John Kirby. John, thank you so much for joining us. Why are Ukrainian pilots actually training with the 162nd Fighter Wing if President Biden's answer on F-16s remains no, at least for now?
This isn't really training, it's an assessment, and it's only a couple of pilots, Wolf. They're out there in Tucson, Arizona, and the main thing that we're trying to do there is assess their ability to use some of the U.S. weapons systems on their fighter jets, on their MiGs, in particular some precision-guided munitions that we're providing them so that they can be more precise in their targeting. And so we're trying to assess, again, with a small number too, how they can mission plan and how they can execute the delivery of those kinds of weapons off of their jets. That's what's going on right now.
President Zelensky told me that these fighter jets are make or break for a Ukrainian victory, but the U.S. Undersecretary of Defense, Colin Powell, told the House Armed Services Committee last week it would take some 18 months to train Ukrainian pilots to fly these F-16s. So what options does the U.S. have for bridging that logistical divide?
Well, what we're focused on right now, quite frankly, Wolf, is the kind of fighting that we expect that the Ukrainians are going to be doing in the weeks and months ahead here as the weather improves. And this is based on their assessment of the fighting that they're going to be doing in the weeks and months ahead. And we're really focusing on those 4 A's, artillery, armored capabilities like tanks, ammunition, and of course air defense. And I saw the interview with you and President Zelensky. He talked a lot about air defense, and the air defense systems that the Ukrainians have, they're using quite effectively. It's important to note that in this now year of war, the Russians have not achieved anything near or even approaching air superiority over the skies of Ukraine because so many of us, our allies and partners, have helped provide competent and capable air defense capabilities and the training that goes along with that.
What is the White House's assessment right now, John, of how long Ukrainian forces can actually hold that city of Bakhmut?
Well, we obviously want them to hold it and completely take it back from the Wagner and Russian military forces that are trying to take it from them. And they've been fighting very, very bravely. It is vicious, close, very, very close combat. Both sides have been really slugging it out, and the Russians have just poured manpower into this, sometimes ill-trained, ill-equipped, mostly convicts, or almost not say majority convicts that they've taken out of prisons to fight over this town of Bakhmut. And it's clear to us that what's really driving this, Wolf, is Mr. Prigozhin and his own greed. There's a mine there in Bakhmut, and we think that he's the reason why Bakhmut has become such a focus for Russia right now, and that's why they're fighting so hard for it.
So what is the administration's assessment also right now, this is related, of Ukraine's ability at some point to retake Crimea?
That's going to be up to President Zelensky. And he needs to determine, A, what he wants to do here come spring and where he wants to go. and how many forces he's going to apply to that effort. We'll certainly provide information and advice and that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's going to be up to President Zelensky to determine, what his goals are and how achievable they might be.
John Kirby, as usual, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet, my pleasure.
There's still a very deep divide in Washington on whether to spend more money on Ukraine. President Zelensky has a message for the top House Republican who has repeatedly said he doesn't support any, quote, blank checks for Ukraine. And Speaker Kevin McCarthy has now responded. This is CNN Primetime.
Good morning, everyone. We do begin with breaking news. Joining us now are two lawmakers from different sides of the aisle.
We're also live in Ukraine.
I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
I'm Clarissa Ward.
A CNN town hall event as battles rage across the country over how and what children are taught. Virginia's Republican Governor Lynn Youngkin takes questions live from parents, educators, and students. A CNN town hall moderated by Jake Tapper tomorrow at 9.
Look at the Supreme Court, and this is CNN.
Last year, Congress approved $113 billion in military and economic aid to Ukraine, but future funding is in doubt with Republicans controlling the House of Representatives and no end in sight to the war. My exclusive interview continues now with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, the House of Representatives here in Washington, Kevin McCarthy says he supports Ukraine, but doesn't support what he calls a blank check for Ukraine. That criticism is being echoed by former President Trump and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, possible leading contenders for the Republican presidential nomination. How worried are you, President Zelensky? How worried are you about this trend among some Republicans that it could threaten the flow of support to Ukraine?
Ну, по-перше, я хотів
I would like to thank the bipartisan support of Ukraine, and it's very important. Of course, there's an internal policy in the US, and there's a foreign policy, and I would like to thank the United States that on foreign policy there's a unified position to support Ukraine. I would say one bit. For instance, here, there are Republicans and Democrats visiting Ukraine, sometimes in a joint group, sometimes in separate groups. Everyone supports us. Recently, I had a meeting with the representatives of the Republican Party, and I'm thankful to a congressman who visited Ukraine. They told me that they want to support Ukraine very much like the Democrats. We don't want to slow down. We have a different approach. We want to give more and now, but not dragging it forever. That was their signal, and I've told them openly that it doesn't matter the format for us. Please understand us. We are fighting. We're not inventing things. It's very important that you come and see it for your own eyes. We really ask you.
Є наслідки війни.
Clearly, on some levels, we commit mistakes, but we're following all this. And it's obviously on different levels, in the Army, Ministry of Defense. If we have mistakes, we're trying to rectify it all. We're very open about this, because we know that without the US support, it will be very difficult for us.
Спікер Маккарті.
I think that Speaker McCarthy, he's probably right and probably not in some point. But I'm very grateful for his position, and I met him in Congress, and he supports us, and it's absolutely true. The only thing that he never visited Kiev or Ukraine, and I think it would help him with his position. I'm not trying to influence his position. He's a free person, and he can have any position which he chooses. Moreover, that he's occupying a certain level, and he represents his voters, his electorate. And I want to say that it's very important when someone comes here and sees in his own eyes the consequences of war, and sees how everything works
коли до нас приїжджають.
But when you come to us, when the Democrats and Republicans come to us, they see the supply routes. Every shell, every bullet, every dollar.
Всі це
And everyone sees that. That's very important. It changes the point of view. You stop believing in all these rumors or whatever it's Russian Federation spreading.
всі, хто отримав
But everyone who was here, who had free access to everything what we're doing, the logistical process, everyone was saying we do not have any questions to you. That's why invite Mr. McCarthy to Ukraine, like I told Mr. Biden. Your visit here is an incredibly important signal of supporting Ukraine. And when he came, he realized that people, not only people in Ukraine support him, people in the US support him, and people are grateful for that.
мотивацію.
And with this visit, he gives people motivation. It's very important.
Пана Маккарті, він
And as to Mr. McCarthy, he has to come here to see how we work, what's happening here, what war caused us, which people are fighting now, who are fighting now, and then after that, make your assumptions, or he's an independent person. Please, let's do that.
On another related military issue, Mr. President, so far the U.S. has ruled out your long-standing request for these longer-range missiles over concerns they would be used by Ukraine to target deep inside Russia. Can you assure American officials that Ukraine won't launch attacks using American-provided weapons on Russian soil?
нас не цікавить. Я
We're not interested. I was saying on many occasions, we're not interested in Russian land. That's why it's not us who started this war, but Russia did. We never tried or break anyone's sovereignty, even such a huge aggressor as the Russian Federation. That systems, that long range, very much like munition and weaponry, we need in order that our people stop dying.
Ми не можемо сьогодні форсувати.
We cannot just cross the Dnipro River at the moment, and they're shooting and they keep shelling, and we don't have the weaponry to reach them. That's why I'm emphasizing the long-range weapons, U.S. manufactured or any European partners manufactured. We need only to protect our peaceful civilian population. And if we can push Russians even further with these long-range missiles or artillery, they will not threaten us any longer. This is the main task for this type of long-range weapons.
The House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, has now responded to President Zelensky's invitation, we just heard it, to visit Kyiv. CNN's Manu Raju spoke with McCarthy. Manu is joining us right now. So what did he tell you, Manu?
Oh, he rejected that call to go to Kyiv because he, in his view, says there should be no blank check to Ukraine. Now, he has been saying that for some time, that he will not simply allow money to be approved to Ukraine, and this comes unless there is some scrutiny to it, he says, and this comes as the voices with his own conference on the Republican side have gone louder and there have been more opponents to approving more aid to Ukraine. But when I asked McCarthy about exactly what President Zelensky told you, Wolf, McCarthy pushed back.
I've been very clear about what I said, no blank checks, okay? So, from that perspective, I don't have to go to Ukraine to understand whether there's a blank check or not. I will continue to get my briefings and others, but I don't have to go to Ukraine or Kiev to see it. And my point has always been, I don't provide a blank check for anything.
Now, it's a bit unclear exactly what McCarthy means by no blank check. When Congress has approved the past aid to Ukraine, there's a process that goes back and forth between the Congress and the executive branch, the White House, about exactly what the aid is needed for Ukraine. The Defense Department comes and gives classified briefings to members of Congress so members can understand exactly what money is needed and where it is going. But nevertheless, a sign here, Wolf, of the challenges ahead in the new power dynamic on Capitol Hill, with Speaker McCarthy indicating here, again, no blank check, and also he has no plans to visit Kyiv despite President Zelensky's offer.
Yeah, invitation. All right, thanks very much, Manu Raju, up on Capitol Hill. Would President Zelensky ever speak directly with President Vladimir Putin of Russia to end this war? And when does he predict Ukraine finally might be able to secure its freedom? We'll be back with more right after this. Our CNN primetime exclusive interview with the president of Ukraine continues right now with the biggest question of all. How does this war ever end? As you know, the United States has been warning China against providing lethal weapons to Russia. Have you been briefed, Mr. President, recently by U.S. officials on where this all stands? Do you expect China to take that step?
Я б дуже хотів, щоб
I would like to have all the countries support the end of the war, and on the side of all other security directions, which through the war we have lack of,
і ми зацікавлені.
and we are interested to have China on the side of the nuclear safety and security.
І у Сполучених Штатах Америки
The US doesn't have much in common with China. We understand that. And how the US will be living with China, it's a matter of between US and China. But when the war starts in the European continent, which is happening today in Ukraine, we have to be interested in limiting this war and ending this war. That's why this factor should unite us. Russia is an aggressor.
Росія не повинна.
Russia should not be on the sovereign Ukrainian territory. It should go away, not with the force, but to retreat itself, to respecting the international law. It shouldn't be occupying the nuclear power plants because it's a threat to the whole of the world.
На Запорізькому.
I'm talking about the Zaporizhzhia power plant. That's the risk, and we other countries should do this, all of them. Despite the geopolitical differences, we have to be interested in peace, from the sovereignty to territorial integrity to the end of this war.
Under what conditions, Mr. President, would you be willing to speak directly with Vladimir Putin?
Я вважаю, що
I think that today we don't have any circumstances to talk to the Russian Federation president because he doesn't hold his word. We don't have any confidence in him, and he killed thousands of people. In order to discuss a diplomatic resolution of the war as a whole and configuration of this diplomatic decision, not military but diplomatic decision. In order to do that, Russia should leave our territory, and after that we have to join the diplomatic tools in order to do that. We can find any format with our partners just after that.
So what does the end game, Mr. President, look like? How do you define victory in this war?
перемога буде.
We will have a victory.
Перемога закінчиться.
I think that victory will end up with the understandable security decisions for many years to come, and I'm sure after this war there will be more understandable situation in the European continent and more stable situation on the European continent, and Russia will not be able to threaten any other countries fighting for their freedom and independence.
Якщо їх війська не вийдуть,
If Russia's troops will not leave Ukraine territory, it means war will be raging in Ukraine, in Europe, on and on and on. And that's why at any point there will be another war, which will lead to the Third World War, and we totally understand that.
ось і все. Тому номер один
Number one issue, they have to leave Ukraine either should be pushed out of Ukrainian territory or through the negotiations and agreements with other partners. They have to leave our territory, and then, only then, we can talk about diplomacy. Now, we have, how to say, if we will leave it, it will be just a calm before another storm.
Do you believe, Mr. President, that Ukraine can win this war this year, 2023?
Все тільки залежить від швидкості
It all depends on the speed of the supply of the material and military support. Only on that. The longer it will take, the less motivation fighters will be without any supplies of weaponry. That's why the motivation will wane, because if we not give people weapons, they cannot go into offense. And if you wait and wait, the victory will come later. But I'm not doubting this victory. It only depends on time.
President Zelensky gets personal in a moment when I ask him about his children and what it's like to raise them in this time of extreme turmoil. Amid all the pressures that come with leading a country in war, Ukraine's president also has the important job of father, raising an 18-year-old and a 10-year-old. And that's where we go next in our exclusive interview with Volodymyr Zelensky. The last time you and I spoke, Mr. President, you shared with me that your son and your daughter have had to grow up quickly because of this horrific war. How are you and your family doing now? What do you tell your children?
Ви знаєте,
Thank you for your question. Thank you for mentioning the children, because it's because of them we're fighting. My daughter joined the university and she studies there, and my son is attending a school in Ukraine. They're both in Ukraine, very much like other Ukrainian kids. We're living with sirens. Today, the different situation, we got used to it. We want victory. We don't want to get used to war, but we got used to the challenges. Everyone wants one thing: to end the war. Very importantly, without victory. Nobody trusts Russia anymore. And probably the next generations won't be trusting Russia, this is true. They grow up, and they don't need to be told anything. All our children in Ukraine, they're grown-ups, but with children faces. But they're very grown-ups, they understand everything. They're sure in everything. They're not mediators in this war. They only support victory for Ukraine.
My special thanks to Ukrainian President Zelensky for this very candid, lengthy interview. You can catch me tomorrow, of course, in the Situation Room, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Hello and welcome to our viewers joining us here in the United States and all around the world. I'm Rosemary Church. Just ahead on CNN Newsroom, as California prepares for the Pineapple Express, a story of survival. An 81-year-old man trapped for nearly a week in a snowdrift with just croissants and candy has now been rescued. I'll speak with his grandson. Heavy rounds of Russian shelling targets energy facilities in at least 7 regions across Ukraine, cutting power and killing at least 6 people. We will have a live report. Plus, the sky is getting even more unfriendly. Why punches flew on this Southwest flight.
Live from CNN Center, this is CNN Newsroom with Rosemary Church.
Thanks for being with us. And we begin in California, where the governor just declared a state of emergency in 21 more counties. That's 34 in total, as a new round of storms move in. Authorities urge residents to get ready and be prepared for heavy rain and possible flooding over the coming hours. There are currently more than 17 million people under flood alerts across much of central and northern California, as well as parts of Nevada. Along with the heavy rain, the higher elevations are expected to be hit with even more heavy snow, just as they're still trying to dig out from earlier storms. Officials warn residents the rain combined with snow could overwhelm some communities, and they're warning of possible roof collapses. CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam explains why.
Well, if you're anything like me, you have maybe fond childhood memories of playing outdoors during a winter storm with that light, fluffy snow. And we know that sometimes those storms come in on the mild side and we get a denser snowpack, so it's easier to make a snowball or a snowman, for instance. But sometimes there's so much moisture associated with these winter storms that they actually pose a threat to structures and homes. Now, I bring that up because that's exactly what the National Weather Service out of California is warning some of its residents for the upcoming weekend with this latest atmospheric river event that's about to take place. Did you know that 12 inches of snow in a typical sized home, wet snow we're talking about, is equivalent to having 3 pickup trucks on top of your roof? Let's say you double that snowpack. We're talking 24 inches of heavy, wet snowfall, and you're talking about nearly 40,000 pounds of pressure on top of your house. No wonder there's the risk of structural collapse with this heavy, wet snowfall. We just have to investigate the origins of where this moisture is coming from. We call it the Pineapple Express because it originates near Hawaii. It's pulling in a lot of deep tropical moisture, and that means that this will be a mild storm as it unleashes this kind of fire hose of water and heavy, wet snowfall on the higher elevations. Weather Prediction Center picking up on that. Level 3 of 4, where you see that shading of red, Sacramento to San Francisco. Notice that like a very small southerly shift in that moderate risk of flash flooding for the day on Friday. So keep that in mind. Malibu northward. Now this is how much rain we anticipate. 3 to 6 inches for the most part. There will be the heavy wet snowfall that will be measured in feet, especially across the Sierra Nevada crest. But you have heavy wet snow on top of what's already fallen, and that is why we have the potential for rapid snowmelt, flash flooding, landslides, and mudslides. Can't forget about the potential of 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts on top of that for the highest elevations. Here's a quick look at the latest winter weather alerts blanketing the western U.S. Back to you.
Some good news out of California. An 81-year-old man survived nearly a week trapped inside his car with only a handful of supplies to keep him alive amid the snowstorms. Jerry Jure was trying to make the journey from his mountain home in California to the family residence in Nevada, but didn't beat the winter weather. After his car got stuck in a snowbank, he lived off snacks and snow until police found him. His car battery died partway through the week, leaving only a light quilt and hotel bath towel to keep him warm. Joining me now is Jerry Jure's grandson, Christian Jure. Thank you so much for talking with us.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me on.
So, what an extraordinary story of survival. Your 81-year-old grandfather living on croissants and candy for nearly a week while stuck in the snow. How is he doing right now?
Better than anybody could have expected. He's doing actually really, really well. I called him in the hospital the day he was rescued, and, he was released within a few hours to go back home. He was in incredible health. The vitals were looking great. I think he was just mildly dehydrated. That was it. Other than that, I spoke to him on the phone. I think it was yesterday. He's back with my grandma, and he's doing great.
Wow.
They've been 56 years, and I'm glad they're back together.
What a medical miracle he is. So what happened? How did he end up being stuck in the snow in his car?
From what I heard is he didn't think the storm was going to be as bad as it was, and he had checked the Caltrans website to see if the roads were clear, and it, gave him the green light. But as he left about 30 minutes from the house, I believe he slid off the road and got stuck on the side, and that's when the blizzard hit, and that's pretty much how it happened.
Wow. And so he was there for just under a week, and he survived on the candy, the croissants, and I think the Scotty biscuits, right? So how was he eventually rescued?
Well, the search team was supposed to go out days prior, but the weather was so awful they couldn't get a helicopter in there. And, days were going by where they couldn't get to him, and finally, I prayed about it hard, and prayed that the weather would change. And the next day, it was the most beautiful day we've had in weeks. And they were able to get a helicopter out there and rescue him. And it was too bad they couldn't land the helicopter, so they had to hoist him up in the air.
Amazing. And what is he saying about that experience and the whole experience?
You know, he's an Air Force veteran. He's worked on an Air Force base for many, many years, including NASA and a lot of things. But he had never ridden a helicopter before, and he was quite to do it. And I think the pilots had said he was smiling the whole way to the hospital.
What an extraordinary week it has been for him. Christian Duray, thank you so much for talking with us about your grandfather's experience, and we're so happy that he is well now and doing incredibly well after this.
Absolutely.
U.S. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell is in the hospital. A spokesman says the 81-year-old tripped and fell at a private dinner in a Washington hotel on Wednesday night. McConnell has represented Kentucky in the Senate since 1985. California Governor Gavin Newsom has tested positive for COVID-19. His Deputy Communications Director says Newsom is experiencing mild symptoms. The Democrat will work remotely and self-isolate. We are following developments in Ukraine, where officials say new Russian attacks have targeted energy facilities in at least 7 regions. In Kyiv, at least 2 people have been killed and power has been knocked out to around 15% of the city after 2 missile strikes there. New images show smoke rising from the aftermath of one strike on the capital. Meantime, in the east, in the battered city of Bakhmut, the head of the Russian mercenary group says Wagner has now taken all of eastern Bakhmut as the Ukrainian military acknowledges Russian forces are still advancing. This as NATO Secretary General says he can't rule out that Bakhmut may eventually fall in the coming days. And CNN's Salma Abdelaziz is following developments for us. She joins us live from London. Good morning to you, Salma. So what more are you learning about today's Russian missile strikes across parts of Ukraine?
So people across Ukraine today waking up to yet another barrage of Russian missiles striking 7 different regions, Rosemary. Officials there in Ukraine telling us that they're attacking energy facilities, that energy facilities have been struck, leaving Kyiv, the capital, 15% of it without electricity, without power. But also residential areas are being struck as well. We understand in Kyiv alone there's been several deaths. And I have to point out that one of the areas that's been struck is Lviv. That is very significant, Rosemary. That's all the way in the west, near the border with Poland, a place that's absolutely considered a safe haven, a safe space. It's a place actually where displaced families have been sheltering, have been staying, thinking that that's an area where they are safe. We're hearing now from Ukrainian officials that at least 4 people have been killed this morning after a residential area in that city of Lviv, all the way in the west of the country, again, was struck. Now, again, this just happened in the early hours of this morning, this barrage of missiles around 6:30 this morning local time. So we're still gathering information on what's taking place, but we already have these images that you're playing out for our viewers to see of the plumes of smoke looming over the capital, Kyiv, the other sounds that you hear there of explosions. So a really terrifying morning for residents. And we have had some relative quiet, if you will, particularly when it comes to the capital, Kyiv, and of course Lviv, all the way in the west of the country in the last days and weeks. So this is significant, but it also is a continuation of a strategy we've seen from the Kremlin, which is first, of course, to target energy facilities. That's happened time and time again, trying to leave people in cities and towns across the country far from the front lines, without electricity, without running water, without power, essentially increasing the cost of this conflict. But we're going to stay tuned and continue to try to provide you with more updates as this plays out on the ground, Rosemary.
All right, Salma Abdelaziz joining us live from London. Many thanks. Well, breaking news now, lawmakers in Tbilisi, Georgia, are withdrawing a controversial foreign agents bill that sparked days of protest. That is according to a tweet from the European Union welcoming the decision. The measure would have forced groups like charities and news organizations to register with the government if more than 20% of their funding came from overseas. Protesters compared it to the law Russia uses to stifle the freedom of press and expression. Police used water cannon and tear gas to try to clear the tens of thousands of protesters. Dozens of people have been arrested. A top US aviation official faces a grilling over a string of safety incidents. You will see the latest incident of flying not so friendly skies and hear his response to it. That's just ahead. Plus a final homecoming for 2 Americans killed after being kidnapped in Mexico. We will have the latest on the investigation into their deaths and how the survivors are faring.
We must finally hold social media companies accountable. It's time to pass bipartisan legislation to stop big tech from collecting personal data on our kids and teenagers online. Ban targeted advertising to children.
Welcome back, everyone. Another incident of violence on a US airline flight has been caught on camera. The footage shows passengers trying to separate 2 men who got into a fist fight on a Southwest Airlines plane in Dallas. It happened while they were boarding a flight for Phoenix on Monday. Witnesses say both men left the plane before takeoff. Police responded to the incident, but no one was arrested. The footage also shows a man who threw the first punch telling other passengers why he did it.
I'm telling you what happened. I'm telling everybody what happened. He approached me aggressively with my family. I don't play with my family. Tell him what happened. Tell him what you did. I will sit down in jail for you approaching my family. I will die for my family. So that's why I beat your.
The acting federal aviation chief faced a grilling on Capitol Hill on Wednesday over encounters like that and other safety concerns. The FAA received reports of more than 2,300 incidents involving unruly passengers last year. On top of that, there have been 6 near collisions between passenger planes on the nation's runways so far this year. Acting Administrator Billy Nolan told reporters the agency will use every means at its disposal to crack down on unruly passengers. He says the agency is looking into the runway close calls, but he says safety is always a work in progress.
Safety is always a journey. We are never going to declare victory, and if there's something to learn, we're going to look for ways and opportunities to learn it.
Nolan also says the FAA will ask hard questions about the runway near collisions at a meeting next week. The CEO of the embattled railway, Norfolk Southern, will be grilled by US senators on Thursday. His testimony will follow the company's 2 freight train derailments in Ohio that took place in the span of little over a month. That includes this incident in East Palestine in early February, where chemicals were released and residents fear long-term toxic contamination. CEO Alan Shaw wrote in the Washington Post on Wednesday that Norfolk Southern is firmly committed to helping the affected communities. Another railway company says there's no danger to the public after a separate derailment in West Virginia on Wednesday. A freight train owned by CSX hit a rock slide before jumping the tracks. 3 crew members were injured. At least 1 locomotive caught fire and fell into a nearby river, spilling fuel and oil. CSX says it will deploy containment measures. The company also says the train did not carry hazardous materials. Well, in the coming hours, the bodies of 2 Americans killed in Mexico will arrive in Texas for a second autopsy. Shaeed Woodard and Zindell Brown were half of a group kidnapped at gunpoint in northeastern Mexico last week while traveling with a friend to get a medical procedure. CNN's Rosa Flores breaks down what happened next.
2 of 4 Americans kidnapped in Mexico, seen in this disturbing video, are now in the U.S. and preparing to return home. Latavia Washington McGee, a mother of 6, heading to South Carolina today, according to her family, who spoke to her by phone.
All I did was say hey and told her that I missed her.
The other survivor, Eric Williams, remains in Brownsville, Texas, undergoing treatment for 3 gunshot wounds to his legs. For now, one person has been detained linked to the kidnappings, a 24-year-old male who Mexican authorities said was watching the victims. Mexican officials would not confirm whether he is linked to a criminal organization. The U.S. is now working to bring home the remains of Zindel Brown and Shaid Woodard, the two people found dead after the kidnapping in the Mexico border city of Matamoros. Their autopsies were completed today. Mexican authorities say they are still investigating what happened after the 4 Americans crossed the border from Brownsville, Texas. We do know the group was driving a rented minivan and got lost en route to a clinic where McGee had a medical appointment, according to a close friend. We just left the hotel where the Americans stayed, and it's about an 11-minute drive to the International Bridge, where Mexican authorities say that the Americans crossed into Matamoros at about 9:18 a.m. on Friday. McGee's mother says she spoke to her daughter about the kidnapping.
A van came up and hit them, and that van, they started shooting at the car. The other ones tried to run, and they got shot at the same time. She watched them die.
The 4 Americans were ultimately found by Mexican authorities here on Tuesday. Officials here say that Americans routinely go into Mexico for medical care using ports of entry like the one that you see behind me, but officials urge them to go directly to their destination. According to Patients Beyond Borders, Mexico is the second most popular destination for medical tourism globally, and millions of people travel there each year, expecting to save anywhere from 40 to 60% on major medical procedures, including cosmetic surgery.
It's risky having any kind of medical procedure done outside of the United States. You run the risk of going to a doctor or a facility that is not accredited. You run the risk if there are any disputes over the money that you've been charged, or if the procedure doesn't go well.
And there are concerns beyond the medical and legal risks. Officials urge caution when traveling. The U.S. State Department has issued its highest warning, do not travel to several regions in Mexico, including Tamaulipas State, where the group was abducted.
You're not only risking your life, but you are also risking the possibility that you may not make it home.
According to a source inside Mexico's Attorney General's office, telling CNN that the Americans who died will be repatriated on Thursday. They will be crossing over here to Brownsville, Texas, where I am. Once on U.S. soil, a second autopsy is expected to be performed. Rosa Flores, CNN, Brownsville, Texas.
3 Los Angeles police officers shot during an investigation are in stable condition. Authorities say they were pursuing a parolee at large who refused to comply with their commands. The suspect shot at the officers who returned fire. The suspect was killed, although police did not say how they died. All 3 officers were part of the LAPD K-9 unit. Well, the U.S. Senate has passed a resolution that would block a controversial Washington, D.C. crime bill that Republicans call dangerous and irresponsible. And the U.S. president has said he will not veto the Republican-led legislation. The issue divided Senate Democrats and put some who are considered vulnerable on the spot. The crime bill was initially vetoed by Washington's mayor, who said reducing penalties for robberies, carjackings and home invasion burglaries does not make the district safer, but the city council overrode her veto. Well, the U.S. Justice Department has issued a damning rebuke of the Louisville Metro Police Department after a long review stemming from the botched raid that killed Breonna Taylor. The U.S. Attorney General says Louisville police routinely discriminated against black people and used racial slurs. The report also found officers used a selectively aggressive style of policing and conducted illegal searches. Taylor was killed by police who burst into her apartment with a no-knock warrant in 2020. The city agreed to pay $12 million and institute sweeping reforms to settle the wrongful death lawsuit. The family's attorney says the Justice Department's new report is not enough and officers should be retroactively held accountable.
It's heartbreaking to know that everything you've been saying from day one has to be said again through this manner, you know. That it took this to even have somebody look into this department.
4 officers are facing federal civil rights charges, and the Justice Department has forged an agreement with the city of Louisville on police reforms. And we have a new court filing to tell you about in Dominion Voting Systems' $1.6 billion lawsuit against Fox News. The company says the right-wing news channel is seeking a First Amendment license to knowingly spread lies. Dominion claims Fox has already conceded its on-air statements about Dominion rigging the 2020 election were false. The court filing goes on to say, and I quote, "If Fox cared about the truth that it now acknowledges, Fox would have its top personalities reporting that truth to its audience today. If not for Dominion's sake, then for the sake of the significant percentage of Americans who still wrongly believe the 2020 election was stolen, including so many of Fox's own loyal viewers who heard it over and over again on Fox's airwaves." Still to come on International Women's Day, Russia's president pays tribute to women in the military as he claims his country is facing direct threats.
With Bill Maher, now on CNN, Friday at 11.
Officials in Ukraine are reporting a new wave of Russian strikes in at least 7 regions across the country. The target, Ukrainian energy facilities. In Kyiv, at least 2 people have been killed and power has been knocked out to around 15% of the city after 2 missile strikes there. And we're now learning at least 4 people have been killed after a strike on the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. Countries around the world paused on Wednesday to mark International Women's Day, including Russia, where President Vladimir Putin paid tribute to women in the military. That praise coming as he claims Russia faces direct threats to its security, and as Russian forces face a fierce battle on the front lines in eastern Ukraine. CNN's Fred Plykin has our report.
While the Russian army continues its devastating assault on Ukraine, with losses on both sides mounting, it's all hearts and flowers in Moscow. Russia celebrating International Women's Day. Many of the women willing to speak to us saying they would make the ultimate sacrifice, sending their boys to fight.
If there's no other way, yes, I would send my son and go myself if declared fit.
We collect money for drones, do what we can, and we want our boys to win.
100%. I support President Putin. He does everything right. Good man. We love him.
And the Russian president is publicly trying to show his love for Russia's women, handing out medals and warning more sacrifices will be necessary.
Now that Russia is again facing direct threats to its security and sovereignty, we see many examples of bravery and determination, courage, a willingness to defend the truth, protect people, and the very future of our state itself, the future that we ourselves need.
On the front lines, the going remains tough. The Ukrainians say they've killed scores of Russians in the past day alone around the embattled city Bakhmut. That's where the Wagner private military company is unleashing its cannons on Ukraine's defenses. Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin talking to his own mercenaries about what he says is a lack of ammo hindering further advances.
How are you managing now when you are almost using more ammunition than you receive?
The guys from another regiment helped us out. They brought a day worth of ammunition. Only that saved the day. When we have more, we help them out.
Prigozhin claims Wagner is now in control of all of eastern Bakhmut and claims Russia's true power will soon be unleashed.
The world is yet to face a fully prepared Russian army with units not yet engaged in combat, with all the possible state-of-the-art weapons and reconnaissance tools. Perfectly trained, they are biding their time until Wagner opens the operational space for them after Bakhmut.
But the Ukrainians say they will stand and fight in Bakhmut, and many more Russian women might find their husbands and sons going to battle as the war drags on.
An Indonesian court hands down a verdict after one of the deadliest incidents at a football stadium. Who's been found responsible for a stampede that left dozens of people dead? We'll have a live report. An Indonesian football club official has been sentenced to jail time over last year's deadly stampede by fans at a stadium. More than 130 people were killed in the crush after police sprayed tear gas during this match last October. The chairman of the organising committee of the Arema Football Club and other officials were put on trial for negligence. Anna Corrin is monitoring the trial. She joins us now live from Hong Kong. Good to see you, Anna. So what is the latest on this?
Rosemary, we've just learnt the verdict for the second civilian of this trial, that being the head of the security of Arema FC. He has been sentenced to just 1 year. That is an even lighter sentence than the chairman of Arema Football, who was sentenced a few hours ago to 1 year and 6 months. Now, the prosecutor, he was after more than 6 years for both of these men. But the judge, in handing down the sentences certainly to the chairman, he said that he had helped ease the burden of the victims' families. We understand that he'd made a sizable donation. But as far as the community is concerned, their anger is very much directed at the police. And we will learn about their verdicts, Rosemary, in the coming weeks. Looking at that footage from October, 1st last year, it was a scene that got completely out of control when police started firing tear gas to dispel this crowd. Thousands of people, and there were women, children, families who had come to watch their football side, Arema FC, play a neighbouring team. They then raced for the exits. And we understand, Rosemary, that these exits were locked. This is the worst football disaster in history. 135 people were killed, more than 300 injured. But like I said, the anger very much directed at the police. There is a sense that there was a complete overreaction by police. The opposing team's fans, who lived 100 kilometres away, they weren't even allowed to attend this football match because of the fanaticism, because of football violence. So it was only the fans of the home team, Arema FC, that were on the football grounds. But still, this violence, unleashed, and 135 people died. Rosemary.
Yeah, shocking number of deaths there. Anna Corrin joining us live from Hong Kong. Many thanks. And I'm Rosemary Church. For our international viewers, World Sport is next. For those of you here in North America, I'll be back with more CNN Newsroom in just a moment. Do stay with us. The state of California is pushing back against drug retailer Walgreens after the company said it would no longer provide abortion medications in more than 20 Republican-led states, even ones where abortion is still legal. The announcement prompted California Governor Gavin Newsom to declare his state was ending all business with Walgreens and pulling back on renewing a contract valued at $54 million. Walgreens said it was deeply disappointed by the decision. The contract with Walgreens was primarily to supply specialty prescription drugs to California's prison system. Well, the state Senate in Michigan has voted to repeal an abortion ban dating back to 1931, as well as its sentencing guidelines. The bills were passed narrowly by the Democrat-controlled Senate and have gone to Governor Gretchen Whitmer for her signature. The law was invalidated decades ago when Roe v. Wade took effect, but it has remained on the state's books and would have prohibited abortions, even in cases of rape or incest, except to save a woman's life. Well, 5 women are suing the state of Texas to change its restrictive abortion law. They want abortions allowed if a physician makes a good faith judgment that the pregnant person faces serious risk of death or a risk to their health. One of the plaintiffs developed complications during her pregnancy. She says she ended up getting septicemia and needing a blood transfusion before she could receive abortion care.
I cannot adequately put into words the trauma and despair that comes with waiting to either lose your own life, your child's life, or both.
Lindy Lee is the Women's Co-Chair and Regional Chair of the Democratic National Committee, and she joins me now from Philadelphia. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rosemary, especially on International Women's Day.
Absolutely, it is an absolute pleasure for us. So this Texas abortion lawsuit involves 5 women who were denied abortions despite facing severe risks to their lives, their twin fetuses, and their future fertility. So now they're suing the state. How significant is this case?
Oh, this is tremendous, and I'm so proud of them. This is no easy feat. Texas was on the forefront of enacting abortion bans. They were the first right out of the gate to impose a 6-week abortion ban on women and imposing $10,000 bounties on anyone who abated or aided a woman getting an abortion. And since then, the Supreme Court has overturned Roe, and we've seen a tidal wave of restrictive abortion bans across the country. In Florida, Ron DeSantis' Florida, they're forcing a woman to give birth to a baby who will suffocate to death 2 hours, a mere 2 hours after birth. In what world is this pro-life? Ohio Republicans denied an abortion to a 10-year-old double rape victim and forced her to travel all the way to Indiana. And again, I ask, how in the world is this pro-life? And then just this week, South Carolina Republicans are pushing a bill that would execute women who get an abortion, and the language is flexible enough to include those who suffer miscarriages.
And Lindy, as you mentioned, access to most abortion procedures was shut down when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June last year, of course, dismantling 50 years of legal protection. Now about 13 states ban abortions, including Texas, but there are some exceptions made when physicians determine there's a substantial risk of harm to the pregnant woman, which means the law should have allowed these 5 women at least to have had abortions. Why didn't that happen, given 2 of the women's fetuses had no skulls and 2 other fetuses were threatening the lives of the twin that the mothers were carrying?
Rosemary, that's such an excellent point. One reason why these exceptions are often not implemented is that doctors are terrified. They are scared out of their minds of accidentally breaking the law. They don't want to accidentally land themselves in jail. And in Texas, doctors face up to 99 years in jail, $100,000 in fines, and the loss of their medical license. So this is no joke. Doctors are understandably not willing to risk breaking the law.
So how likely is it that these 5 women will get the court clarification they're asking for to ensure that other high-risk pregnant women don't go through what they've had to endure?
It's hard. You have Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has become a cultural warrior on this issue. And then you have Greg Abbott, who it seems like he's spending all his time policing our uteruses. So I'm not hopeful just because Texas is so obstinately conservative and right-wing, but I'm so glad that these women are putting up a fight. We need to put up a fight everywhere. The midterms that we just had demonstrates the power of women and the angst and the fury that they incited. And it shows that women aren't just going to stand by and allow for government officials, priests and pastors and religious figures to tell us what we can or cannot do with our bodies. This is our country. This is not anyone's church.
And Lindy, in the midst of these abortion bans, why isn't there already a system in place to confirm that doctors can proceed with an abortion whenever a woman's life or that of her fetus is at risk.
I think these exceptions for rape or incest, by the way, which Texas does not have, they're kind of lip service. Republicans tout these exceptions, but they're not implemented because the doctors are terrified. And I'm not here to blame doctors. I completely understand where they're coming from. People should not be terrified of breaking the law or committing a crime simply for doing their job. Abortion is healthcare. It's as simple as that.
Lindy Lee, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rosemary.
Senior U.S. intelligence officials testified before senators on the United States Annual Report of Global Threats. While the war in Ukraine commanded a lot of attention at Wednesday's hearing, the U.S. Director of National Intelligence said China remains the top concern. CNN's Oren Lieberman has our report.
Thank you all. A look at worldwide threats that keep coming back to China. The heads of U.S. intelligence agencies telling senators that Beijing is modernizing its military, expanding its influence, and working to control supply chains as it tries to replace the U.S. as the global leader.
Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, under President Xi Jinping, will continue efforts to achieve Xi's vision of making China the preeminent power in East Asia. The CCP is increasingly convinced that it can only do so at the expense of U.S. power and influence.
China using its economic force and its tech to spy on adversaries.
Could they use TikTok to control data on millions of users?
Yes.
Could they use it to control the software on millions of devices given the opportunity to do so?
Yes. Senators pushed for a consensus on the origins of COVID-19. The FBI believes it leaked from a lab in Wuhan, but there is no smoking gun and no definitive answer.
The Department of Energy has changed its view slightly with low confidence. It says that a lab leak is most likely, but they do so for different reasons than the FBI does, and their assessments are not identical.
Relations between Beijing and Moscow came under scrutiny, with the U.S. watching closely for any signs that China is considering providing weapons to Russia.
We do see them providing assistance to Russia in the context of the conflict, and we see them in a situation in which they've become increasingly uncomfortable about the level of assistance and not looking to do it as publicly as might otherwise occur. And given the reputational costs associated with it.
1 year into the war in Ukraine, Russia's manpower is spread thin, its military resources strained. But President Vladimir Putin is playing for time, not for short-term victory.
We do not foresee the Russian military recovering enough this year to make major territorial gains, but Putin most likely calculates that time works in his favor, even if it takes years.
There was bipartisan outrage on the investigations of classified documents found at former President Donald Trump's home of Mar-a-Lago and the offices of President Joe Biden and former Vice President Mike Pence.
We still have unfinished business regarding the classified documents that we need to see in order for this intelligence committee to effectively oversee its job on intelligence oversights.
Members of the committee pressing the intelligence leaders to provide the documents or even just to characterize what's in them.
Our patience is starting to run out, and at least some of us are prepared to start putting our foot down if we don't get better answers and Stonewall doesn't stop.
One of the other issues that kept coming up in this hearing was the drug fentanyl, responsible for many of the more than 100,000 annual drug overdose deaths in the United States. And although the finished product, the drug itself, often comes from Mexican cartels, the intelligence chief said the raw materials, the chemicals to make fentanyl, often comes from China. Oren Lieberman, CNN at the Pentagon.
Thanks for your company. I'm Rosemary Church. I'll be back with more CNN Newsroom in just a moment. Stay with us.